What could drive someone to slaughter an entire family in their own home, then spend 10 hours calmly eating ice cream and browsing the internet with their lifeless bodies just feet away? Welcome to SherlockMode. On a cold December night in the year 2000, as Japan prepared to welcome a new century, the quiet suburban streets of Setagaya Ward in Tokyo lay peaceful under a blanket of winter stillness. The Miyazawa family home, nestled beside the tranquil Sashigaya Park, should have been filled with the warmth of New Year preparations. Inside, 44-year-old Mikio Miyazawa, a dedicated office worker for a British marketing company, was spending his final evening with his beloved family. His wife Yasuko, 41, a gentle home tutor, had tucked their children into bed. 8-year-old Nina and 6-year-old Rei slept peacefully, dreaming of the New Year celebrations to come. But as the clock struck 11:30 on December 30th, something sinister was already in motion. A dark figure moved through the shadows of Sashigaya Park, approaching the house with deadly intent. The killer had chosen his moment carefully, when the family was most vulnerable. The intruder scaled the fence behind the house, climbed onto an air conditioning unit, and carefully removed the screen from the second-floor bathroom window. The house, which had once been part of a bustling neighborhood, now stood isolated as one of only 4 remaining homes in the area. Once inside, the killer moved with chilling purpose. His first victim was little Ray, the 6-year-old boy sleeping innocently in his bedroom. The killer used his bare hands to strangle the child, ending his life in silence. No screams, no struggle, just the quiet snuffing out of a young life. But Mikio, the loving father, heard something amiss. He rushed upstairs to check on his son, and there he encountered pure evil. The killer, armed with a 21-centimeter sashimi knife, attacked the desperate father. Mikio fought bravely, even injuring his attacker, but the killer was relentless. The blade pierced Mikio's skull with such force that part of the knife broke off inside his head. The father's body was later found crumpled at the bottom of the stairs, his final act one of protection for his family. But his sacrifice was in vain. The killer then turned his attention to Yasuko and Nina, who had been sleeping together in the attic. Mother and daughter were attacked with the broken sashimi knife, but when it became too damaged, the killer calmly walked to the kitchen and selected a Santoka knife from the family's own collection. In her final moments, Yasuko attempted to escape with her daughter. Bleeding heavily, she carried 8-year-old Nina down the stairs, but the killer caught them. Their bodies were discovered together, mother and daughter locked in a final embrace, their backs touching in death. For innocent lives extinguished in a matter of minutes. But this is where the Setagaya murders become truly bizarre. Instead of fleeing the scene, the killer decided to stay. For up to 10 hours, he made himself completely at home in this house of horrors. The killer raided the refrigerator, eating 4 cups of ice cream directly from the containers without using a spoon. He bit into the cups with such force that they were found torn and scattered across the floor. He drank bottles of barley tea and ate melon, all while the family's bodies lay nearby. He used the family's computer, accessing the internet and creating a new folder at 1:18 a.m. He browsed websites, including that of a Tokyo theatrical group, as if he were a casual visitor rather than a mass murderer. The digital footprints he left behind showed a disturbing calmness. The killer used the family's toilet but did not flush, leaving behind crucial DNA evidence. He scattered documents in the bathtub, used a first aid kit to treat his own wounds, and even took a nap on the second-floor sofa. He acted as if he owned the place. As dawn broke on December 31st, the killer finally prepared to leave. But in his casual arrogance, he had left behind an unprecedented amount of evidence. His fingerprints were everywhere. His blood was on the walls. His DNA was throughout the house. He abandoned an entire wardrobe of clothing, a gray bucket hat, a unique white and purple baseball shirt soaked in blood, a plaid scarf, a jacket, black gloves, 2 handkerchiefs, and a gray and black fanny pack. Size 11 white running shoes had left clear footprints throughout the house. The discovery came at 10:40 a.m. when Yasuko's mother, Haruko, arrived for her regular visit. She lived next door and had become worried when her daughter didn't answer the phone. Using her own key, she entered the house and found a scene that would haunt Japan for decades. The Tokyo Metropolitan Police launched the largest investigation in Japanese history. Over 280,000 officers would eventually work on this case. They collected more than 12,000 pieces of evidence, but the killer seemed to have vanished into thin air. The forensic evidence painted a picture of their suspect. The killer was approximately 5 feet 6 inches tall, with a slender build. He had type A blood and was likely between 15 and 35 years old. His DNA revealed something extraordinary. The DNA analysis suggested the killer had Asian ancestry from his father's side, with markers common in Korean and Chinese populations. But even more intriguing, his mother appeared to be of Southern European descent, possibly from the Mediterranean region. This was a very unusual genetic combination for Japan. Inside the killer's fanny pack, investigators found something that would lead to one of the most intriguing theories in the case. Sand. Not just any sand, but grains that forensic analysis traced to a very specific location, the Nevada desert near Edwards Air Force Base in California. This discovery opened up a startling possibility. Edwards Air Force Base was where many U.S. military pilots trained before being stationed in Japan. Could the killer have been connected to the American military? The mixed heritage DNA profile would fit with someone from an international military family. The killer's clothing provided more clues. The unique baseball shirt had been on sale in Japan for only 2 months before the murder. The sweater contained traces of willow leaves, Japanese Zelkova tree particles, and even a dead bird. 3 types of fluorescent dye were found in the shoes and bag. Police determined that the clothing and knife had been purchased in Kanagawa Prefecture, suggesting the killer had been in Japan for some time, planning and preparing. But who was he? And why did he choose the Miyazawa family? The lack of clear motive made the case even more perplexing. Some money was taken from Mikio's wallet, but far more was left behind. Valuable items remained untouched. This was not a robbery gone wrong. The killer had come specifically to kill. One theory suggested the killer might have had a grudge against the family. Mikio had complained about skateboarders making noise in the nearby park. Could one of them have escalated to murder? But the extreme brutality and bizarre behavior suggested something far more sinister. The killer's behavior after the murders suggested a deeply disturbed individual. Forensic psychologists noted that staying in the house for hours, eating the family's food, and using their possessions indicated either extreme arrogance or complete detachment from reality. Adding to the mystery, several witnesses reported strange activity around the time of the murders. A taxi driver picked up 3 middle-aged men near the house after midnight, one of whom had a hand injury and left what appeared to be bloodstains in the cab. At dawn, a woman driving past the park saw a man jump in front of her car. When she stopped to check on him, she noticed blood on the back of his left hand. Later that morning, a man in his 30s sought treatment for a deep knife wound at a medical office, but left without giving his name. These sightings suggested the killer had been injured during his struggle with Mikio, exactly as the crime scene indicated. But despite these leads, the trail went cold. The killer had seemingly vanished from Tokyo, possibly leaving Japan entirely. Years turned into decades, and the case remained unsolved. The investigation became a cause célèbre in Japan, leading to changes in the law. The statute of limitations for crimes punishable by death was abolished in 2010, largely due to public outrage over the Setagaya murders. The police offered a reward of 20 million yen, approximately $200,000, the largest reward in Japanese criminal history. Over 16,000 tips poured in from the public, but none led to an arrest. The killer remained a ghost. Every year on December 30th, police officers gather at the Miyazawa house to pay their respects and renew their vow to solve the case. Many of the original investigators have retired, but the commitment to justice remains unwavering. In recent years, advances in DNA technology have offered new hope. Police are now exploring DNA phenotyping, a technique that can predict physical characteristics from genetic material. This could finally put a face to the killer after more than 2 decades. The case has inspired countless theories and debates. Some believe the killer was a foreign national who fled the country. Others think he was a Japanese citizen who expertly covered his tracks. The most chilling theory suggests he was a serial killer who simply moved on to other victims. The Setagaya murders changed Japan forever. In a country with one of the world's lowest crime rates, the brutal slaying of an entire family shattered the nation's sense of security. The case highlighted the vulnerability of even the most peaceful communities. The killer's complete lack of remorse or fear was perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the case. He had committed the perfect crime, leaving behind everything needed to identify him except his identity. It was as if he were taunting the police. The house where the murders occurred still stands today, a silent witness to that terrible night. Neighboring houses have been demolished, leaving it isolated just as it was in 2000. The area remains eerily quiet, as if the tragedy has left a permanent mark. For the surviving family members, the pain never fades. Mikio's elderly mother, now in her 90s, continues to pray for justice. She asks the same question that haunts all of Japan. Why did this have to happen? The case has become a symbol of Japan's determination to never give up on justice. Police continue to investigate new leads, test new technologies, and follow every possible clue. The passage of time has not diminished their resolve. International cooperation has expanded the investigation beyond Japan's borders. Police have worked with authorities in Korea, China, and the United States, sharing DNA profiles and following leads across continents. The killer may have fled, but justice has no borders. The most haunting aspect of the case remains the killer's behavior after the murders. The casual way he made himself at home, eating ice cream and browsing the internet, suggests a complete absence of human empathy. This was not a crime of passion, but cold-blooded evil. Some experts believe the killer's unusual behavior was deliberate, designed to confuse investigators and waste police resources. The massive amount of evidence he left behind could have been an elaborate game, making the police chase false leads. The theory that the killer had connections to the U.S. military remains one of the most compelling. The Nevada sand, the mixed heritage DNA, and the killer's apparent ability to leave Japan without a trace all point to someone with international mobility and resources. But other theories persist. Could the killer have been a local resident who expertly staged the scene to look like a foreign crime? The knowledge of the house layout and the family's routines might suggest someone familiar with their daily lives. The case has inspired books, documentaries, and countless online discussions. Amateur detectives around the world have pored over the evidence, developing their own theories about the killer's identity and motive. The mystery has taken on a life of its own. As technology advances, new possibilities emerge. Genetic genealogy, which has solved cold cases in America, could potentially be applied to the Setagaya murders. The killer's DNA might be the key to finally unlocking his identity through distant relatives. The case has also highlighted the limitations of international law enforcement cooperation. Despite having perfect DNA evidence, jurisdictional issues and legal restrictions have hampered the investigation. The killer may be protected by the very system designed to catch him. For the investigators who worked on the case, the Setagaya murders represent both their greatest challenge and their greatest failure. They had everything they needed to solve the case, yet the killer remained free. The frustration is palpable. The killer's weapons of choice also revealed something about his character. The sashimi knife was not ideal for murder, being too thin and fragile. This suggests either poor planning or a symbolic choice. Why bring a knife designed for delicate food preparation to commit brutal murders? The killer's apparent knowledge of the house layout raises disturbing questions. He knew exactly where to find the children's rooms, the kitchen, and the computer. Had he been watching the family? Had he been inside the house before? The time of the attack was also significant. New Year's Eve is the most important holiday in Japan, when families gather together. The killer chose to strike when the family was most vulnerable, most relaxed, and least expecting danger. The killer's decision to use the family's own knife to finish the murders adds another layer of cruelty to the crime. After his sashimi knife broke, he calmly walked to their kitchen and selected their Santoka knife. This was not just murder, but a violation of their home. The psychological profile of the killer suggests someone with antisocial personality disorder or psychopathy. The ability to remain calm after committing such brutal murders, to eat and relax in the presence of his victims, indicates a complete lack of empathy or remorse. The killer's treatment of his own wounds using the family's first aid kit shows a calculating, survival-oriented mindset. He was not in a panic or driven by emotion. He was methodical, practical, and utterly cold-blooded. The fact that the killer left so much evidence behind has led some to speculate that he wanted to be caught, that the murders were a cry for help or attention. but his successful evasion of justice for over 2 decades suggests otherwise. The case has become a cautionary tale about the limitations of forensic science. Having DNA, fingerprints, and physical evidence means nothing if the perpetrator is not in any database. The killer exists in a forensic limbo, identified yet unknown. The international implications of the case continue to resonate. If the killer was indeed connected to the U.S. military, it raises questions about justice, jurisdiction, and the protection of American personnel overseas. Some secrets may be too dangerous to reveal. As we approach the 25th anniversary of the murders, the case remains as compelling and frustrating as ever. New generations of investigators bring fresh eyes to the evidence, but the killer's identity remains hidden in the shadows. The Miyazawa family deserves justice. Mikio, who died protecting his family. Yasuko, who died trying to save her daughter. 8-year-old Nina, who never got to grow up. And little Ray, murdered in his sleep. Their voices cry out for justice from beyond the grave. Somewhere in the world, a killer walks free. He may be living a normal life, perhaps even a family of his own. He may think he has gotten away with the perfect crime. But the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deep it is buried. The case continues to evolve with new technologies and investigative techniques. Artificial intelligence is now being used to analyze the vast amount of evidence, looking for patterns that human investigators might have missed. The killer's ability to evade capture for over 2 decades is itself a clue. It suggests someone with resources, mobility, and possibly protection. This was not a random drifter, but someone with means and opportunity. The case has become a test of Japan's commitment to justice. In a nation that prides itself on law and order, the unsolved murders represent a failure of the system. But they also represent an unwavering determination to never give up. Let us analyze the evidence with the methodical precision of a detective. The killer's mixed heritage DNA suggests someone from an international background. The Nevada sand points to American military connections. The unusual behavior indicates a deeply disturbed individual. The killer's knowledge of the house layout and family routines suggests prior surveillance or connection to the family. His calm demeanor after the murders indicates either extensive experience with violence or complete psychological detachment. The timing of the attack, just before New Year's Eve, was no coincidence. The killer chose a moment when the family was most vulnerable and when police response might be delayed due to the holiday. This shows careful planning and calculation. The killer's decision to stay in the house for hours after the murders is perhaps the most telling clue. This behavior suggests either supreme confidence in his ability to escape or a complete disconnect from reality. It also provided invaluable forensic evidence. The international nature of the evidence suggests the killer may have fled Japan shortly after the murders. If he was connected to the U.S. military, he would have had the means and opportunity to leave the country quickly and quietly. The killer's mixed heritage DNA profile would be relatively rare in Japan, but more common in places like California or Hawaii, where there are large populations of mixed Asian European heritage. This geographical clue could narrow the search significantly. The psychological profile suggests a killer who views his victims as objects rather than human beings. The casual way he ate their food and used their possessions shows a complete lack of empathy. This is the hallmark of a psychopath. The killer's ability to injure a grown man like Mikio, who fought for his life, suggests physical strength and possibly combat training. Military personnel receive extensive hand-to-hand combat training, which would explain the killer's effectiveness. The forensic evidence tells a story of a killer who was both careless and careful. Careless in leaving behind massive amounts of evidence, but careful in his execution and escape. This paradox suggests either overconfidence or a deliberate attempt to mislead investigators. The killer's use of the family's computer suggests he may have been looking for something specific. What was he searching for? Was he trying to learn more about the family? Or was he simply killing time? The answers may lie in the digital forensics. The case represents a perfect storm of circumstantial evidence pointing in multiple directions. The killer may have been Japanese, Korean, Chinese, or American. He may have been a local resident or an international visitor. The abundance of clues has created a maze of possibilities. But perhaps the most important clue is the killer's continued silence. For over 2 decades, he has never been caught. never confessed, never made a mistake. This level of operational security suggests someone with training, resources, and possibly protection. The Setagaya murders remain one of the most perplexing unsolved cases in modern criminal history. Despite having more evidence than most solved cases, the killer's identity remains a mystery. But the investigation continues, driven by the hope that justice will eventually prevail. The case has become a symbol of perseverance in the face of seemingly impossible odds. The investigators may have aged, the evidence may have yellowed, but the commitment to finding the truth remains as strong as ever. The killer may have won the battle, but the war for justice continues. If you enjoyed unraveling this mystery, like and subscribe to Sherlock Mode.